So let me explain a little bit of what we'll talk about tonight. Why I consider moving my data center and remote office to Azure. It wasn't long ago that I was asking myself that. I don't want to talk about myself too much, but just a little background. I've been in IT for like 25 years. I worked for this company for that long. Imagine I had 5 weeks vacation, but in 2018 became a parent and I needed to move on. Won't get into that. But through all these experiences, we had data centers, we had remote offices, about 68 that me and at one point me and another guy in Texas were caring for. And we were the whole time asking, or focused on how do I get hardware out of my remote offices. And I'll talk more about that a little later because it's a nightmare. It's expensive, there's backups, there's outages. It is just a nightmare. And then the data centers too. But at the same time, I was having to justify in my own mind, because I had to justify it to management. Here's why you need to spend this money. Here's why you need to make this whole change of thought. Now, I came to Microsoft about a year ago, and over this last year, really two things. Azure's developed so quickly, even over the last year, over the last month, when we talked about something that came up and changed. And it's just continually like, oh, wow. I didn't know it would do that, or wow, that's new, and that is awesome. That would have helped us a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Really, within the last, I'd say 5 years ago, I think we were pretty justified not moving things out of remote offices because of technology. MPLS lines are not cheap, right? We only had so much money and so much internet out of an office. So the change of technology, change of Azure, it really opened the doors to moving your workload from remote or data centers to Azure. In fact, here on our own campus, we used to have a data center or two, no longer. We've just got switches. They've moved everything to Azure. So I appreciate that about Microsoft. They call it eating your own dog food. Even applications, Outlook on my phone is a beta version. It continually updates, and almost all you've got Outlook on your phone here, it's the dog food version. We eat it first to make sure it's okay before we send it out to the public. So, same with Azure. Let me ask you before we go on, just a show of hands, who's, we'll say, generally familiar with cloud services? That's good, that's good.
Can everybody hear?
Yeah, can I
Make sure. Can everybody hear all right?
back row, can you hear me? Okay. All right, well that helps me know where we're going. And so what we're going to talk about today is we're going to go with a quick overview of Azure. And I'm not going to deep dive into a lot of technical things. That's not really what this is. So I'm not going to tell you to click this button, click that button, or this works over such and such port. It's sort of, I want you to be able to see things, and when you walk away and you're thinking about it, I want you to think, wow, Azure file shares are cool. Let me look into that later. That's where I want to get you. Just sort of show you some things it can do, maybe a few concepts behind it, but not a whole lot of, and if you have questions and technical you want to ask, by all means do so. I'll try to answer. If I can't answer, we'll make a note of it and get you an answer later. But just sort of so we all understand. So today we're going to go over a quick overview of Azure, and we're going to talk about these different reasons why it's good for moving your data center to remote offices to. The global footprint, redundancy of it. We'll talk about the remote offices users, the flexibility of Azure, backup and disaster recovery, one of my favorite subjects, all the monitoring and management that Azure gives you. We'll speak about troubleshooting a little bit too. All right. Okay, and this is just a little intro and things to think about. Moving to the cloud, a few considerations. It's not a small decision. It takes some planning, some thought. As this first line says, ultimately, the decision to move to the cloud remains incredibly complex. Why do I say that? Take the time to form a holistic cloud strategy and fully understand the costs associated with both on-premises and cloud solutions. It's going to help you make the transition. And I'll try to be referring back to cost a little bit throughout this presentation, but not a whole lot, because our costs are publicly, they're on the site, so you can know the retail cost. Some people have enterprise, so I really don't know what you're paying, and I'm not here to sell anything. If it does appear I'm trying to sell you something at some point, it's just because I'm excited.
Let me borrow the slide.
Did I move it?
No. Never mind.
Okay.
Or because you borrowed a slide.
Oh, yeah, I borrowed a lot of slides. I did. But holistic cloud strategy. This is sort of what you got to think about, really how deep I want to get. We're going to talk about how it's flexible. You can have hybrid solutions where you don't have to put everything in Azure. You can put a little bit in Azure. You can use Azure to extend your on-premises offerings. It's very flexible. But cost, it takes a lot, and I will talk about it later because costs are huge. And I think I fell in this trap too, because I would do a comparison. It's like, well, I got this remote site. I know it costs me X amount of dollars for hardware, storage, VMware, or whatever. And then I compare the cloud cost. I was like, man, I can't justify that. But that's really narrow-minded. I wasn't taking the whole picture in, the backups, the personnel, the risk I was taking, the loss of downtime. So it's a huge decision, and we've got to consider all the costs. And I will drop a few cost things in as we go along, but not too much, because, again, I'm not a money man. What do you want to think about? You want to spend large chunks of money in capital, so on your equipment, on infrastructure, or would a smaller monthly operating expense be preferable? Let the accounting people think about that. What do I want my staff doing? Do I want them spending time maintaining infrastructure, or do I want my staff working on business-centric projects aligned with our vision? If you run hardware, it breaks, it needs patching, it needs security. It's a tremendous amount of work to keep it running. Would you rather have them work on projects and let Microsoft take care of all the hardware? Lastly, is my data center highly available to business users? Sometimes we would make the excuse on remote offices. Again, we had like 68 of them. We would say, well, it's just remote. If they're down, we're IT people. We'll get it back up as soon as we can. And we had SLA expectations, but they're only good as the paper they're written on at the end of it. With Azure, and we'll talk about it, we can easily make an office highly redundant with very little cost. Because really, it always came down to cost. If I got a remote office with hardware in it to make it redundant, I had to double that hardware somewhere else and then pay for the data line to connect it to. Tremendous. Plus software and maintenance. But we'll talk about that. All right, let's see a little bit what Azure is. Hopefully I can make this not too boring. It's ever-expanding cloud services. So I bolded a couple things. They're cloud services. So just think about that like your ordinary restaurant. I want this, I want this, I don't want this. This will help me this one. They're services you purchase. And basically, Azure is a data center. As they say, a cloud is someone else's data center. And that's all Azure is. And they offer all these services at their data center, and it hopefully will simplify your life. That's our goal. The freedom to build, manage, and deploy applications on a massive global network using your favorite tools and frameworks. A lot of what they've done is use third-party. Microsoft has a whole different outlook on Linux and third-party applications. They welcome it. I think over 50% of our workload is Linux anymore. And because of that, well, we brought all these in so they can be used on Azure as well. I got some exciting news about VMware, by the way, if you're a fan of that, at the end of it. Speaking of bringing in other companies. All right, so let's talk about this a little bit. There's really like 4 areas of Azure, and I'm going to just go on to the next slide. Because this really start to understand what it is. So here's our traditional infrastructure, right? On premises. I put in my network, And I bought my storage, I bought servers, now Virtualize. With the Microsoft, I bought their Windows or Linux or whatever you're using. Then I got my middleware, I'm monitoring all these runtime data, people. Then I'm either buying applications or I'm writing my own applications, right? And then your people are taking care of all of this. And you're responsible for all that cost. And if you've ever bought hardware, you know hardware is usually half the cost. I won't mention a few brands, but it's ridiculous what you pay in maintenance and hardware for this. We had one company, I tried to get the company to just buy extra units of their product instead of getting maintenance, because the maintenance costs more than the product itself. Ridiculous. Not to mention all the patching, things break, you gotta have staff, and again, it's a tremendous amount of work, especially across, again, this could be remote offices where you're not even sitting. All you have is a remote access line to it. So that's traditional. As we start getting into the cloud, they have a term, infrastructure as a service, or IaaS. What this means, you're starting to shift some of your hardware up into Azure. Azure's going to have its own networking, its own storage, it's expandable. And we'll talk more about storage later. Servers, so you're starting to go virtualized. You may have virtualization here, but now all of a sudden, again, it's at someone else's data center at Microsoft's. And there's a whole virtualization stack around that and abilities. Oops, forgot to bring that up. So IaaS, it is an instant computing infrastructure provisioning and managed over the internet. So no longer will you be going over your local LAN to reach your servers, you'll be going over the WAN, the wide area network, over the internet possibly. You don't even need a dedicated line sometimes, as long as you have internet. It really depends on what you're doing, right? So what's key is Microsoft now manages the infrastructure while you purchase, install, configure, and manage your own software. So we're taking this, but now you're still responsible for the software, the Microsoft Windows or Linux. You're still going to be managing that, adding users, doing whatever you need to, adding drives, formatting, all that good stuff. That's at this level. Next we have platform as a service. So we start taking on a few more things, operating there's tools around managing this runtime. This is really starting to get into the developers area too, DevOps and things of that nature. But the more you go up, the more basically you're handing over that you don't have to deal with, you don't need staff to deal with. And I'm not saying you lay them all off. I'd rather say give them something important to do rather than patch a server. Next, software as a service. So once you get into this realm, you're handing everything over. Think about something we can relate to is like Office 365. You got it on your phone, I've got it on my laptop. You don't care what happens in the background, right? You just want your Word, your mail, and someone else is dealing with all this infrastructure in the background. Think about, I want to talk a lot about food, I must be hungry, but it's like a restaurant to me. I order something good. As long as the guy in the back washed his hands and my food is good, that's what I want. That's what SaaS is for software. You can go get an SQL instance now without running the server, without having to patch the server. There's a lot of configuration on SQL servers. Log drives using read cache or blah, blah, blah. The list goes on and on. Now with software as a service, you can come to Microsoft and say, I need an SQL instance. Now you still have to set up the connections, right? You got to keep your internet and maybe your application servers in Azure too. There's a little bit, but the taking care of your SQL server is gone. And that's what software as a service is. And there's many offerings by Microsoft on that level. All right, so those are your three: infrastructure as a service, platform, software. And there's a fourth: serverless computing. Now, I'm no guru in this, but I'll tell you what I I understand it. Imagine right now, even, how do you explain it? Traditionally, you would write an application or you buy one, right, and you patch it, you make changes. IIS, for instance, it's you write your web app, you got to take care of your server as well, your IIS instance. It's all traditional, right? And that's most software now, unless you're in the software as a service. But a lot of people can't use software as a service. They write their own. They need something that just they need. Serverless computing comes in, and it's a whole new way of writing apps. All right, so Azure has these things called functions, and I think they're ways of getting work done. All right, so think of it as a whole other way of writing software, and you don't worry about security anymore because you're not running on traditional servers. There's something called Kubernetes that's really at the core of all this. So as you use these things of Azure, and again, I don't want to get technical, and I'm really not one to speak on this in the technical level, but you write these functions, and then there's logic apps that look at your functions, and as things queue up, this thing throws triggers. It says, okay, if this happens, well, then you do this. Think about expanding software like a website. And we're going to talk about websites too, because there's other ways of doing it. But imagine it's like July, and you sell items for Christmas, right? Your business is going to be slow. Come November, December, business is going to pick up. What do? You keep buying more servers and adding it, or you buy them at the beginning of the year? No. And in this, you write your software so this Kubernetes starts shooting out these pods that are basically the essentials of what you need to run your app. It's got the code, it's got any DLLs, any software it needs just to run your app. And as business picks up, they're signing on, they're logging, they just start multiplying. And you're getting charged only for what you use. And that's true across Azure. As they start building up, you get charged more and more. People start logging off, it starts shrinking back down. It's just nothing like traditional. But it's the future, in my opinion. I think in another 5 years, software will be much different than we have it now. It'll be much more about serverless because of the beauty of the growth and the contraction as business comes and goes.
There's no wasted space because the resources not like tied to a server, which is unused resources.
Yeah.
So it's just running the private server essentially, like
Yeah.
on its own. Right?
Yeah, little like multiples, like you just think of it just like pop, 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 pop. As it grows, they just grow and then they just start shrinking all back. And you don't worry about any security. Microsoft takes care of all that, and that's the beauty too. It takes work off of your lap. All right, let's talk about global footprint and redundancy of Azure a little bit. So hopefully that gave us a little overview of what's available and how it's structured. As far as their data centers, there's broken up in 54 regions, and a region is basically a 7 data center deployed within a latency defined parameter, blah, 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 blah. But basically there's 54 of these across the globe. I only put the map of the US on there because the slide's only so big. But if we were looking at all this, there's 54 across the globe. 54 regions worldwide, 140, I don't know if that's referring to 140 countries, okay.
Do all of them have the ability to connect to each other like here?
I'm not, no, yes and no. Most do, but it depends. There's some services, for instance, there's a VMware service we're talking about later, it's only in a few right now. So they usually, as they roll out new things, they might be limited. There's some file things that are limited between zones. But for the most part, yeah.
What are the white dots?
The white dots are availability zones. So let me get down to that. So regions are these smaller ones, if you can imagine. Geography is a discrete market typically containing 2 or more regions. So it's sort of, these are the smallest, you get a little bigger. Availability zones are physically separated locations within a region. So I guess, for example, West US 2 might have 2 separate locations within that region. So the immediate benefits, and again, I'm thinking of this as, why should I move my things to Azure? It's a world-class platform. Talking to my manager the other day, he's like, Todd, you can't just think of yourself as a support engineer. There's about 550 VM support engineers globally, and we support 30 million VMs. Think about that. That's about 55,000 per person. Because I was thinking to myself at one point, man, I see all these problems because we come into work every day. The problem, I'm thinking, man, this thing's falling apart. But I only take about 2 tickets a day for my 56,000 VMs that I support. I think that's pretty good. It's a world-class platform. It runs great. It's a beautiful thing. Plenty of training. You can even go from the portal. There's a training link in one of the side blades at the bottom. There's a lot of free training in Azure. There's YouTube. There's documentation that's incredible for Microsoft. I've come to appreciate that over the last year. Honestly, a lot of times we get support tickets. I look up documentation, I send it to them. The answer's there. And people, you can find it. It's incredible. Plenty of training. It's supported by others. So when you have problems, even performance problems of that nature, you think your server's not running right, something crashed, it's so simple. Every blade on the Azure portal has a create a support ticket at the bottom. And I know some of the guys, they're all right. They're pretty good.
So is that free and included in the pack? Like there's a pay as subscription, pay as you go
Yeah.
subscription,
Yeah, it has support.
and then we do like reserved businesses, but like then our companies consider doing CPM or cloud, some kind of cloud management. But
Yeah.
does Microsoft charge extra for the support, or is it included with the?
There's different levels.
Okay.
Right. There's 2, very expensive, and what everyone else gets. Well, that's true. It's like for large companies, they may get the very, and I'll talk about that. The last slide is about troubleshooting, but basically it all comes with your subscription, and it's nice that the company's passionate about supporting people. They've hired so many over the last year just to ramp up our support. The business is growing, so we're bringing people on. Outages are rare. They happen. You got to remember, it's a data center. There's physical things at the root of all of this. There's hurricanes and power outages just like anywhere else, but they're rare considering the amount of VMs that we cover. And the most beautiful thing, no one blames you for the outages. If you've been under the pressure of something crashing at one of your sites, you know the beauty of this, that you can ask Microsoft, what happened? Is there a root cause available? We can sometimes send them to you.
Microsoft on campus a lot of times have had different teams, different groups, but having a lot of teams move to more Azure support really out of this campus, even as there are a lot of the folks that here work in the Azure environments, mostly, right?
I'm not sure I follow you.
So I remember years ago it seemed like there was a lot of database administrators that worked out of here, and then they had support level 2 here. It seems like a lot of folks that I meet now that say they work at Microsoft are support technicians for Azure environments.
That's true. And it's true not only here but globally, right? Because the way the model is, say I'm on a critical situation, something has horribly gone wrong with someone's server. I work on it throughout the day. They call it a crit, and we pick it up, and boom, we're on it. And the customers agreed if it's a day, they're going to work 24/7 until we get it fixed. Well, I'm not going to be here 24 hours, I'll tell you. I leave at 6. By 5, I start handing that off to the next shift. So whether it's in Dallas or out in Seattle, wherever it is, and we'll just continue to revolve it around the globe until it's finally complete, until the customer says, I got to go to sleep, then we'll pick it up the next day. It's a good model. Cost benefits. I'm not going to spend too much on cost, but no capital expenditures, no installation, because as we know, buying it is only part of the problem. You got to then put it in, then you got to configure it yourself or pay someone else to do it, and And then the dreaded warranty and services decisions. It's decisions because you got to start weighing out how much do I need this hardware up? What am I willing to pay? Is it just 8 to 5? Or do I need 24/7 support and everything comes at a cost? No maintenance costs, so you're not having to pay these costs. It's all in Microsoft's hands. You're just paying them to use their hardware.
Can I ask you a question about
Yeah.
cost
Yeah.
and design? You know, I've been in IT long enough where we use say, oh, it's just the internet, get over it. But there is an additional cost, right? And that's your data lines.
Sure.
Plus, if you're smart, you're going to have 2 separate demarcs from your building
Sure.
with 2 different vendors bringing in, right, multiple lines.
Yeah.
That's an additional cost, and it can be, you know, if you start talking DS3s and better, you're starting to talk about some serious money. And in my experience, the thing that goes down most is freaking AT&T or Verizon or whoever, not
Not segment. You know.
Not. But, you know, that is a major concern that, you know, it seems to me it's often kind of glossed over. Oh, you're going to save all this money. But it also requires, and not all of my sites have high-speed, reliable internet, right? Not most of us who support big enterprises have parts of the enterprise in the boonies.
Sure. Yeah, we worked with companies, or some of our own companies in Brazil, for example. We were worried about people breaking into the building and stealing the equipment. So you never know. And we had a lot in Mexico. It was real iffy. So, like I said in the beginning, you really got to take case by case. Is it best? There's hybrid solutions, right? Maybe I keep some files on site and some in Azure. I'll talk to you about that in file sync. It's not the answer for everything. I'm not saying that at all. That's when you got to weigh it and start weighing in your cost, communication lines versus what I have now.
We'll say if you don't have a DSP location, you're probably going to have a DSP location anyways. If you got people out in the boonies that have bad internet access, they're going to have bad internet access anyways.
Yeah.
But one thing that's nice about that peering thing is that you can spread your load across multiple regions and peer close together to infrastructure stuff. So if somebody's out in California with bad internet, you can like real close to a resource. And the same resource here if it's peered up.
We had some sites in the middle of a copper mine, and it was pretty iffy. But yeah. So anyways, let's talk about storage replication a little bit. When you go to create your VM, you have different options of storage replication. There's LRS, local, just think local. So Microsoft automatically duplicates your data without you asking because they're covering themselves. They want to keep you up and running. If they have some horrible failure, they can bring it up on their duplication. Right? So that's local. But if you need more than that, you can tell them I need zonal. So then they start going to the different zones, right, across the country, maybe East Coast, West Coast. Geographically separated regions. So now you're talking going from U.S. to Europe. I need my server to be on these 2 things. And that could be, too, think about the applications that may need the data on 2 different continents. And I think that really speaks to the read-only GRS. So you got GRS, it's in 2 different regions or countries. Think about if you've got customers in the U.S., you've got customers in Asia, in Africa, India. You can use this read-only access to duplicate this data for your website in all regions. Because you think the guy in India is trying to get onto your website, it's going to be much faster if he's accessing it from there than from coming across the ocean. So a few replication options with your VMs and storage. But this is not a replacement for backups. We'll get to backups. But understand that you would be amazed how many tickets we get when things have gone horribly wrong, someone's deleted something, there's corruption. We say, yeah, backups? Nope. And and my jaw drops every time, but it keeps happening. I'm just shocked. We used to say, where I used to work, the best way to get fired is to become the backup guy. Because they're important, right? And when they're not running, man, data's lost and significant money is lost. So this replication is not a replacement for backup. All right, talk a little bit about, we'll take a break here in a few minutes, by the way. Azure files. So this is probably two of my favorite things. Sharing files, and we're going to talk about two different products, Azure File and Azure File Sync. Azure File is a share in Azure. It's an SMB file share, or a SIF. And it's hosted in Azure, right? So you've taken, traditionally you'd have a file server, whether it's a data center, your remote office, wherever. You got your server, you create a share, link people up to. This takes the server out of the picture. We're going to go into that more, so let me stop talking. Azure File Sync is different in that it's still a share in Azure, but it's connected to multiple servers, a single share. So people can be writing in Dallas, New York, Denver, all at the same time to the single share, and it's syncing everything up.
Is that like DFS, or is it hard to configure or something?
It's not hard to configure, it's pretty simple. Let me talk about it here a little bit more. But no, it's not DFS. Alright, so the live file, Azure File is useful. Again, this is a share. Imagine you still got a...
Is this OneDrive commercial?
No, it's different. It's different.
Okay.
Imagine you have a server on premise. It's out of storage. You bought 5 terabytes. Guess what? Right now, you can either add storage to it, or you just connect it, create another share in Azure. You connect it, boom, you got a drive with untold storage. So it's just a share, just like any other set. And you've got the permissions, just like you can set now.
So you create like a drive, or you connect it to a file server?
You connect it, and there's different ways to connect. There's PowerShell and other CLI things. You just run on your server either in Azure or on premise. It just makes that connection. And I don't want to get ahead of myself because I got another slide about it. So let me head down this one. Yeah, I already spoke to that. So you can supplement an on-premise one. You can lift and shift applications. Simplify cloud development. So the point of this is that a lot of people develop in the cloud globally. So I can be creating in the US, working with my team in India, and using the same share. And that way everyone's got the same data. Better performance than sharing from the server in Azure. Yeah, think about this. I'm going to walk away with this point because this was important to me when I learned it. When you're taking that whole server out, because normally you have Windows and operating, then you got Defender, checking all your files. You're taking all of this out. Azure Files is going to give you much better performance. And this is one of those things I'm not going to give you any stats or why, because it actually changes on the size of your share. But if you want to know more, look it up, and it's amazing. Just the performance piece.
How does it do that? Just like, how's it doing better than, is it not in the Azure environment still?
It is. So it's just using a storage account, and I don't know what they're doing, right? Because someone else wrote it.
So are they caching it more local to the user?
No, but that's more file sync. And I'll talk to you about that. It's a straight connection across the internet, right? And of course, there is a port you have to have open for that to work. Some of the key benefits of the share is shared access. It supports SMB, so Linux is going to be able to map to Windows. That other company, Apple. It's fully managed. So again, think about this. We've taken the server out of the equation. So servers drop. Patch Tuesday could happen, something could happen. Power loss, corruption. There is no OS anymore that you're having to worry about. This is just a share that you mount to and let Microsoft take care of all the management behind it. A lot of people like scripting and tooling, PowerShell, Azure CLI. You can, of course, attach with that. Resiliency has been built from ground up to always be available. Again, you're taking that server out of the equation. Beautiful thing for remote offices, because again, we would have discussions, how do I get my equipment out of my remote office? Because I got equipment, I got backups, I got tapes, and I got Susie at the receptionist trying to work with her to take tapes out. Hope to God they ran. And this would have answered all my problems. Take all the equipment out. Azure File Sync. I love this one too. So Azure File Sync replicates files from your on-premises Windows Server to an Azure file share. Now honestly, like engineering documents, we knew we could never take those out of the remote offices because you got engineers pulling up huge assemblies, tons of files, large files, and it just simply probably would not work. Anymore, I'm not sure what the bandwidth we have available. But the answer here is, okay, I can have a server on premises, and it's attached to this file share. And as my engineers work all day long, they're writing locally, but it starts replicating off to Azure. And think about it, there goes my backups again. I don't have to back up locally. I got all this in Azure, and I can back up straight to storage in Azure. Wonderful thing. You don't have to choose between the benefits of cloud and benefits of on-premises. You can have both. So you've got your share on here. And think, I could also have engineers in Dallas, engineers in Denver, here, and they're working on the same thing, the same share, because I could replicate this to multiple servers wherever I want. Allows you to centralize your file services in Azure while maintaining local access to your data. Yeah, I think I covered that.
So is it just an appliance that you're putting in, or do you have to do much maintenance to it, or you just plug it in? And...
No, it's no appliance. This is just like it's just like a SMB share again. Well, no, it's not. The setup is different. But it's basically a share, and you're connecting with your local server. All right, so this is sort of helping you out with your. If you do have to have things local, because some things you just can't take out. You use it too much. And this will help you sync either to Azure and your on-premises, or several on-premises to the same share.
Is it like the software that installs to the server that syncs up?
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty simple setup. It just takes minutes, but there is a client basically that installs and connects in the background. Let's see, multi-site access. We talked about that. Cloud tiering. This is what I love too. The store only recently accessed data on local servers. So imagine I have a server on premise. It happens. RAID set gets corrupt. Boom, it's done. That's a big problem normally. With this, if I rebuild my RAID set and just wipe it clean, start formatting it, get my client running again, instantly, this whole file structure that I have will show up as available. Now, obviously, it's a couple of terabytes, so it's not there, because it does take time to sync back down, right? But if someone mounts that drive and say, here's my file, awesome, boom, they click it, immediately it's going to download for them. Now, it may take it a second or two longer because it's not actually there. But as you've got this back up and running, it starts syncing everything down over time. It takes its time. As people need things, so they click on it and it downloads them first.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's like, why didn't that happen a long time ago?
And it doesn't stop there. You can also make some settings. You know what? Only give me the last 30 days of files that were accessed. And that's all it's going to bring down. Because I don't know if you ever ran some studies on how often I have on our users, and it's incredible. Years of data that's been there and hasn't been touched in years. So this is going to tell it, only give me 30 days. And in fact, after 30 days, just replicate it up to Azure and remove it from the server. The link is still there. It appears it's still there. Or you can also tell it, replicate everything down, but leave 20% on my disk available. So these are all settings that you can make for your remote centers. It's a great, I love this thing when I found it.
Are there different recovery times, or like tiering, like a slower storage versus a fast storage, or cost price?
I would
for
think,
archive?
well, for archive, no. I know what you're saying, like cold storage, hot storage. I don't believe so. I believe it's all standard. It's whatever storage account you, I'm gonna stop talking there. I don't believe so. Again, integrates with Azure backup, so no need to back up your data on premises anymore. I love Azure backup. It's very simple.
Can you do Azure backup from an on-prem into the cloud?
Yes. Yeah. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. Rapid DR, we just talked about that. That's what I was saying. It'll just show up as available and replicate over time. That's sort of what it looks like. You're going to have one share. And you know how people can nest shares? They create a share, create a folder under that, and you don't do that here. You got one share, and you do it right. You control access by NTFS permissions. That was one of my pet peeves, if you hadn't picked that up, nested shares. But again, you got a server here, you got your user, your apps, you got here, if this little dies, it's okay. You can DR that thing pretty quick as soon as you get up and running.
Don't you need nested shares though sometimes? Like certain levels of permissions for some users.
Maybe. I'd rather do it through permissions, but I guess it's probably a preferability thing. Is this a good time for a break?
Yeah, sure.
So flexibility. The nice thing about Azure, again, it's a pay-as-you-go. Pay what you use, not more, not less. Sometimes we don't know. I used to have to go to the business every 5 years. We try to cycle their equipment. It's getting old. I'd have to ask them, okay, what do you see the next 5 years? How much data are you using? Are you bringing in new apps? And of course, you never know. They didn't really know, right? Because who knows what the economy is doing. The thing about Azure, again, it's back to the restaurant. I like talking about food. Azure is not like a buffet. You don't pay one price and you just eat what you want. It's more like an a la carte. Okay, I want this, I want that, I want to get this VM, and I want it to grow over time, and the bigger I get, the more I'll pay for it. So I don't have to make 5-year decisions up front. Scaling up and down. One particular option for scaling is actually Scalesets. You see this a lot around applications like web. All right, like you have a web client, again, the whole, all my businesses in December. I've got this web server, and you can actually create these Scalesets. As traffic comes in, these load balancers start shifting all this traffic to these different VMs. And when they become inundated after you set your levels, it starts spawning new VMs all by itself. And as traffic slows down, your VMs go back down. Now this is different than what we were talking about earlier with the Kubernetes thing, because these are entire VMs. Right? You have to have a base image, you got to keep it patched. It's more complicated. Well, it's a heavier load. It's a whole VM, like whether it's Linux or Windows, what have you. So those are called Scalesets, many different uses.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if you have that kind of on-demand scaling, how does the copy that how do you know, or how do you ensure that the copy that spins up is a current copy of what you're working now?
It will, they're all based off of one gold image, I'll call it. I don't think that's the term.
Yeah, that's what you saw.
Yeah. Yeah, so they all spin off that. And when you go to update them all, you update that one image, you create auto updates, and it goes and updates everything. So it's, and honestly, like these things are quickly rolled out because they usually have this base, and a lot of people use Visual Studio to roll their applications out to these things. And in fact, sometimes if, say, you got 6 of these and number 5 is giving you problems, we'll usually tell you, you know what, just delete number 5, let it roll out another one. It's going to copy from that image again, you'll be rolling. Because you got to pick where you want to spend your time. Do I really want to fix this over 2 or 3 hours, or do I just want to delete it and let the thing spin back up?
Thank you.
All right, so we talked about some of this. You only pay for what you're using. I'm not going to go over that again. You can access your data on the cloud at any time, at any location, so it's flexible. You don't have to be on premises. If you ever had to go in on a weekend to fix your equipment, you'll understand how beautiful that is. And honestly, it's not a selfish thing. I do love my weekends, I love my nights, but if you're having to go in to fix things, that means the business is affected and they're losing money. So it's not about me, except to me. Some cases, even though VPN is not required, so it depends on the application you're using. A lot of things are the whole infrastructure is in Azure, and you can just go over the internet to access it. You may not need an RDP connection or anything. It depends on the usage. That's why it says in some cases. And it's a hybrid solution. I'm not here telling you to put everything there. Some companies do. They've made that decision. They've counted the costs and they've got their whole internet plan. But if you want to start with some things, like you said earlier, maybe you've got a server that's running out of space. The business said, hey, I won't be growing over the next 5 years, but they did great. They doubled the size. And, you know, when you give someone a file share, it's going to fill up. It's just a rule of nature. Give them space, they'll fill it up. So rather than have to add extra storage, maybe just give them another share that's in Azure. Think about, let's see, we talked about it here. Okay, later we're going to talk about DR. A lot of companies don't do a good job with DR, and part of that is because they don't want to spend their money on the hardware. It's tremendous. Think about Azure as a hybrid solution for that. Maybe you keep everything on premises, but you use Azure as your DR site. All right, Azure VM solution. This is fresh off the whatever. If you're like me, I use VMware for years, since like version 3.3. It's a great product. Everyone's been chasing it ever since then, and it's probably still ahead. Now, because of this, a lot of companies have hesitated to go to Azure because they've got a huge investment in VMware. It works so well. Their people are trained in it. They know it backwards and forwards. The cool thing is now, Microsoft has worked with VMware, and they can offer through this Cloud Simple solution, basically it's a hardware, almost a hardware level integration with Azure that integrates with your VMware. That didn't make a whole lot of sense enough, so let me explain. Through this Cloud Simple, you can create VMs at your on-premises location. You can just vMotion them, that's a VMware term, right to Azure. And they're still talking. Your vCenter still sees the one that's at its other data center. If you use vCenter, you can see multiple data centers if you set it up right. vMotion the thing back and forth. You can set up your disaster recovery solution that VMware offers and have Azure as its target. And at the same time, I can go to my portal that's in Azure and create VMs, and they show up in vCenter. So the things are talking together, and it's basically, you don't know any difference. It looks like you've got a server on premises, but the thing is sitting in Azure. It's about all I know. It's very new. I watched a few videos and I was excited to see it. I think there's a few little, this came from their website. Get scale automation, fast provisioning for VMware workloads on global Azure infrastructure. So from what I saw, yeah, it's brand new, it's incredible, but you basically, you tell it, okay, go provision me a server, almost like you would a physical server. You give it the size, I want this many CPUs, this much memory, here's my storage I want, you create my VNets for me, just like in VMware. It uses the same terminology, and boom, there it is in Azure, and you attach it to your vCenter, you're good to go. Of course, you gotta go over your network connectivity, but that's a given. All right, so keep using your existing VMware investment skills, tools, including all these things. Modernize your VMware workloads by integrating with native Azure services such as Azure Active Directory, AI, and analytics.
So I got, it's probably, you don't talk much about pricing, but every time I've looked at an Azure virtual machine, you know, it's like alphabet soup, right? You can have this or this or this or this or this or this. This looks like these people have the option of creating a custom virtual machine, right? You're in VMware, you're saying I want this much memory or how many processor time, whatever. How does that connect back to the pricing model of, you know, 2 from column A, 1 from column B?
That's a great question. I would assume it's the same because when I can, like I said, I can go to the portal and create a VM, and I'm just telling them, hey, by the way, you're a VMware VM using this file simple. So I can't imagine, I haven't used it or tried it.
I'm just curious.
But, you know, VMware, you've got set prices for this size VM. Your storage is going to vary in price depending on your needs of performance and capacity. And, you know, there's that calculator tool. I'm sure you've seen, but even it's a little menacing at times. Yeah. So,
Does your service have a bursting model? Where you can go with the lower price model and be charged on the additional CPU?
yeah, they do. It's what do they call that? I don't remember the term. But yeah, if you look at all the different types of VMs, there's a web page just for that. Just look up Azure VM types, and there's a bursting model where basically you say, I'm not going to use this VM very much throughout the month, but the closing, I'm going to use a lot of it. And so basically you get charged for usage, a small usage throughout the month, and as long as you don't peak up over that at the end of the month too much, you get the benefit of the large capacity at the end of the month, but probably not do that. Let's see, Azure Active Directory, yeah, so there's a lot of permissions. Oops, that's the wrong button. There's a lot of permissions in VMware, of course, and you can start integrating that with your Active Directory. So you take advantage of Azure pricing and benefits for Windows Server and SQL. So there are benefits, pricing benefits for having VMs in Azure. Again, I'm not going to go into the details. I can't tell you off the top of my head anyhow. But the more VMs you have, the more what's the term? There's some built-in CPU and memory advantages that you start getting free servers basically. Because if you're not using what you have for each allocated license, you got leftovers, and when you start growing on, all of a sudden you've got servers. Pricing benefits. Talk to your accountants. All right, my favorite, backup and recovery. This is interesting. This came off this research base, so they did their homework right. 140,000 hard drives fail each week. Here's the scary thing, they may do it by accident, but 60% of small to medium businesses that lose their data will shut down within 6 months. Yeah, I hate backups, but I'm passionate about it at the same time because I know how important they are. 58% of small businesses are not prepared for data loss. So, plan for disaster. And these are things you just got to ask. Is your business data regularly backed up? Again, it just gives me nightmares when I ask people, do you have backups? And they say no. Is it ready for unimaginable IT disasters? I think you could probably do a whole presentation on disaster recovery and plans and planning and all the things involved. It's a huge topic. People have whole careers built around it, and it's for good reason. You have a plan set in place in case of a ransomware attack or structural damage. Ransomware, let me talk about that for 2 seconds. That's when these people get in and somehow they access your server, they encrypt it all, and they say, hey, send me money at this address, and I'll give you the code to unencrypt or decrypt. We don't, Microsoft's official stand is don't pay them. You don't know if they're going to fix you. You just don't. And at that point we ask, what? Do you have backups?
They didn't call you if they did.
Yeah. And honestly, when we get a ticket like this, they say, hey, we have ransomware attack. What can you do for me? We say, yeah, backups. They say no. We say, well, there's nothing we can do. Because there's honestly nothing we can do. So you gotta get backups. And I'll answer your question here in a minute. We'll come back to ransomware here in a second. Have you ever imagined losing all your organization data? I have imagined it and lost sleep over it.
It happened to Sony, and a guy who had root key access and just wiped the whole company, or like the whole data center.
Yeah, even the ransomware hits big companies. I've heard some pretty interesting stories. Oh, mostly success, because usually large companies that went through all the exercises of disaster recovery. They regularly run through and make sure they're still good. Just think that our disaster recovery plan goes something like this. Help. So we're going to talk about two different things: Azure Backup and Site Recovery Manager. Basically, the backup service. We'll go a little more on the next screen. So that's an overview. The backup service backs up data to Microsoft Azure Cloud. You can back up on-premises via machines and workloads and Azure virtual machines. So this would have been a lifesaver years ago. This again has been developed. Now we have faster lines that enables us to be able to do this. I don't think maybe 3-4 years ago we could have even done it if we had it, just because of the technology. But now we do. You can actually back up my on-premise machines over the internet to a vault. It's basically a backup vault in Azure. Or you can, of course, do your virtual machines. Site Recovery Manager is a little different. It provides a disaster recovery solution for on-premises machines and for VMs. It's more of a replication tool. All right, Windows and Linux, fancy pop-up. Most of everything we talk about is available for Windows and Linux, and the same is true with backup. It now works with Linux as well as Windows. Okay, Azure Backup and Site Recovery Manager. This might be a little redundant. Let's see, offload on premises. Yep, we talked about that. It does scale easy. If I remember right, basically you create a backup vault, and that vault becomes your target for your, whether it's beyond your on-premises or in Azure. And that vault, if I'm not mistaken, has no limits on size. You can just keep, you're paying for the size, right? As it grows, you pay more. And you can set limits on how much you're backing up. But if you really want to keep every backup from here to eternity, I believe it's right. Yeah, just keep sending the money. We'll take your data. The nice thing, of course, there's unlimited data transfer when it's coming in, and I believe, check the website, but I believe even when on the restore, you don't get charged data on that. But I may be wrong. Get at consistent backups. So, a lot of things with SQL, you need to pause everything, run the backup, restart it. Azure Backup will do all that for you. Retain short and long-term data. So you set the retention plan just like any other backup utility. Say I want to keep it for 30 days, a year. I want to keep my yearlies forever, but get rid of everything else. Very flexible. You set the retention policy. And there's a lot more information about RTOs, RPOs, and that good stuff on the website. Azure DR benefits. So we're talking about DR now, disaster recovery rather than just backup. Oh, let me go back to the other one because you had asked about, I don't think I ever answered it. So on the backup, and we were talking about ransomware with encryption, your backup doesn't go to any kind of SMB share that anyone can access. It goes to a vault. Azure Backup Vault is what it's called. So once you're there, you're safe. It's inaccessible to the server over anything. So ransomware should never be affected by that. Now, of course, if someone infected your computer with something 6 months ago that caused the encryption, you restore from 3 months ago, you're just restoring that same. So you still got to clean the server out once you restore it. And we'll help you with that, of course. We just can't help you once it's been encrypted. We're done. So here are benefits. So you can, this is nice. You get the tool around, and you guys know you can get a free account with limited, well, you have to look at the details. Yeah, you can do quite a bit, but be careful, don't run over your limit. But it's so easy to configure the disaster recovery. It's within minutes, not days or weeks. It's got a built-in recovery solution with the VM. Again, no large capital investments for a DR site. And this is probably what stopped us or hurt us more than anything in our company that I work for, to have a DR. We could plan it, but those plans involve big dollars, big redundant lines, hardware, maintenance, and for the most part, they didn't want to approve it. What can I say? So you run the risk. In Azure, you cut a lot of that out. You really do. That's to me where the money starts making sense. Install all of that, and most of it's going to be sitting at rest, and I'm not going to be charged near as much when the VM is deallocated. The one time I have to turn it on. And of course, there's also, you can run through DR plans. You have to, I work with our backup people how to do that, but you can actually restore things, bring them up, test to make sure it's coming, then shift them back and forth. So it's flexible as far as planning too, because your DR plan is only as good as when it works. Pay, like everything else, pay for what you use.
The site recovery tool, does that maintain a full snapshot of your subnets, networking?
No.
Okay. Because that to me was always like the scariest thing.
You know, actually, I'm not sure. Now that you say that, I think you have to set all that up. Because you're basically, let's say for something on premises, I think you have to set all that up in advance. But honestly, I've never done it. I don't work in backups. I would have to talk to our backup people. But I would think you have to set up basically your networks in Azure in advance, because you're going to have to tell it, you had this old IP, now you have this new IP. That's part of your planning, how to change my DNS, what have you.
Can I
Yeah.
put into the...
No. Go
But
ahead.
I worked on a particular case that involved that, and they had failover. And they failed over from the on-prem to Azure. The only thing is you can't have the same address space on your on-prem as you do in Azure. It's got to be, you have to set it up ahead of time. And once you do the configuration, then when it comes out to flip it back, you just flip it back and you have to do a little bit of time, and it's put back.
Works in networking, so we work together a lot. And it's things that, when they have VM problems, they come to us, and vice versa. If they have network problems, we shift it over to them. So we got a large team here in our office. The management and Azure management through the portal. You know, there's a lot of work to setting up monitoring, but we have a lot of things covered here under this topic. There's security protections built into Azure. I talked about each of these as we go on. Backup and recovery, we talked about that. There's monitoring of your infrastructure, configuration, including update management, automating and scripting things, policy management. So let's start talking about each of these. First, under monitoring, I'm going to start right here in the middle, because here's all your infrastructure. And from this, I can pull different metrics and logs. Metrics being like how much CPU am I using, memory usage, disk, all that good stuff. Those are metrics. Logs I can start pulling from applications, operating system logs of that nature. So to me, those are the core, and what do I do with them? I can start creating dashboards around the metrics, different views, use Power BI to start analyzing things. Application insights. This was an eye-opener for me when I got to looking and working with some cases on this. It's incredible the amount of data they pull on an application like a web server. They know every little millisecond between when a guy clicks you're ordering your favorite pair of socks on your website, from when he goes order and it goes to the internet, it starts going through the application stack, the browser, to the database, to the storage, to here. Every little step they can monitor and tell you how many milliseconds it takes and figure out where it's going slow. Incredible. Let's see, what else? Okay. Then we can take our alerts or logs, and then we start creating alerts for us. So maybe my CPU has gone through the roof, and I want to know about it. I can create an alert, or I can create auto scales. If it reaches such and such a point, boom, 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 I start scaling it out. And there's a lot of integration. We talked about different APIs and logics that Azure works with as well. And we're monitoring, like Slack, for example. Security and threat management. We have this thing, and it's an important term, role-based access control. This is basically how you give people access to different things in Azure. Because not everyone is small. Some companies are huge, so you've got this huge team of people. You want them to do different things. You don't want to give them the keys of the kingdom to everything. Maybe this guy just can troubleshoot things, but you don't want him powering things off. You can really get granular on what people do. You do all this through this role-based access control.
Is that typically like checkboxes, or do you have to know JSON?
No, you can, if you look at the role, I forgot, someone told me the other day, there are just a page of predefined roles, but you can go define them yourself too.
So typically it's in JSON?
I don't know, I don't think so. I think you can go pick through the website what you want them to do, create a name. You could do it if you want to do JSON.
No, I don't think so.
I would.
It's like, it's super dangerous when you start playing. I was playing around with some of that stuff.
Yeah.
You don't know exactly the order to apply things. You can really give somebody too much permission and mess things up.
We also, there's a lot of anti-malware people we work for. If you look on the site, there's extensions, and you'll see all these names: Semantic, Microsoft, Care Micro, Casper, a lot of different solutions for that. You just pick your favorite. Maybe you have an enterprise agreement with one of these guys. Multi-factor authentication works really well. We use it in almost everything we do. Funny story, one company I worked for, the security, this is years ago, they came in and said, okay, to get into your email, you've got to use multi-factor authentication. It wasn't even available at the time. It was like a concept at the time, but they laid the rule down and it just cracked me up. You had to get exceptions for everything. Privileged identity management. If you're a hardware guy, you'll love this because basically you're creating temporary administrators. The application guys come to you and say, hey, I need admin rights on this server because I'm installing, and usually we're one to say no because you're going to mess things up. Well, on this one we can say, okay, you can have it for a week and then it expires.
So does that attach to your AD credentials existing, or do you have to create a new credential just for this purpose?
It's to their user. Yeah.
Is that a storage?
No, that's across access to VMs, or I guess maybe I would have to look to see exactly what all it covers. But I know typically you use it for a server to give them rights. Identity protection. Let's see. Consolidate suspicious signing activities and potential vulnerabilities. There's a whole, and I think I referred to it in another slide, a security. What's the term? Security center. And you can set it up to monitor your VM with the logins, and it'll flag things and send you alerts through email saying this has happened. We recommend you do this. We rarely do things automatically for anybody because it's just too dangerous. You need to make that decision. But we'll flag you about it. Yep, there it is, Security Center. Helps prevent, detect, respond to threats, provides integration, security monitoring, policy management across the subscription. All right, update management. This is a wonderful thing. You can go into a particular VM and turn on automatic updates, set some parameters around it, like when you want it to happen. Or we have these things called resource groups, where basically it's just a logical ordering of things. I have all my test VMs in one resource group, and I might have all my production in another resource group. And I can also go in and say, I got 50 VMs in here. I don't want to do all this on all of them. So I turn on automatic updates for the whole resource group in one click. And I say, okay, update my test first. A week later, do my production once I've seen nothing horrible's come out of the test.
And like WSUS, same type of thing.
Yep, except easy.
And then like the rollback features, like integrated into there pretty easily too.
That's a great question. I don't know. That is a great question. I'll have to look that up. Oh, we're almost done, guys. Troubleshooting. I remember telling this vendor one time, because to me, there comes a time, and especially in hardware, when, in my opinion, unless you're at a bank and you have a huge need of highly transactional, thousands of items, it's almost got to the point in hardware where anyone can do the job, in my opinion. 90% of the time. There's a few, right? But to me, it comes down to support. And I told one vendor, it's like, I'm never ordering from you again, because I can, when my hardware goes down, I call you and the response I get is, we'll call you back in the next 4 hours. And this is like, I've had it happen, and that's why I was talking to him. And I'm talking a whole site down, and you're losing a lot of money because people aren't working their Twitter. And I can call my vendor B and say, hey, I got a problem, and I never get off the phone with the guys. And what a decision. So for Azure, I thought this was great. I migrated our northern data center to the cloud. But the cloud stopped working. I can't find the phone number for our cloud guy, so whatever. Boss says, you lost our data center? That's one way to look at it. Had to tell you, getting help in Azure is so simple. Every blade that you go to at the bottom is going to have open support ticket. And you just do that, put it in, and there are varying return times. Someone was asking earlier about the different support levels. There's basically the top one, I forget the term, I apologize. But for level A, which is a production down, that's our expectation, production has stopped. If you pay more money, we'll call you back in 15 minutes. If you don't, we'll call you back within an hour. And that's an A. And the expectation there too, just so you understand, is we work on it 24/7 until it's fixed.
This is the built-in support model, right?
Yeah.
It comes with that.
Yeah. Otherwise, we call it a level B, which is like, hey, this is broken, but business is still going. I need you to fix this pretty quick. It's annoying me. So that's a B. We'll call you in 2 to 4 hours. C is like, this thing is sort of annoying me, or how do I do this? Maybe how do I get this working? How do I get that working? 4 to 8 hours, 4 to 8 hours, we'll get it back to you. That's our SLA. That's what we strive to get. And working for, as a support engineer, I can tell you, we take a lot of pride in helping people. And it's a great organization. I'm proud to be here and helping everybody. That's it, guys. Any questions? That was a lot.
That support like A, B, C, is there another level to, or is that like?
No, that's pretty much it.
That's it.
It's the same as the commercials.
So your baseline would probably be like the C then, right? Yeah.
Usually-
With the premium.
We get the majority in B,
Okay.
and we get some C's. A's, even an A, we'll take on, we say it's 24/7 until it's done. We're realistic, right? Sometimes we may work on it 12, 24 hours, and the guys got to go to bed.
Well, the first question they asked us if you try to open an A is, will you have someone here
Yeah.
in the middle of the night to answer?
We're always given a yes, but in that case, we'll drop it to a B. And we're still going to give it priority, because usually it comes back around to the guy that worked on it the day before, and he knows it's important. And we'll either raise it to an A or just, we give it priority. We understand.
So as far as documentation goes, this is always a problem because as you're building out the cloud environment, right, and the security groups that are involved, ports are involved, and these segments that are attached, and all these things that you have to do. Is there a way to document that template easily? Now, I've seen the network visualizer, and that was really, really cool. But like, is there a way to more fully export like out to a file and say, hey, I did this in this environment, like take a picture.
Network-wise, I'd have to refer to Kevin.
Do you know?
I don't know of a way because I don't work with networking too much. I know if you look in the blades, even of the VMware or the VMs, sorry, scratch that from video. There are things where you can set up test teams like constantly and
Like a heartbeat monitor?
yeah, but I want to say I was playing around with it the other day and I saw where it would like map out how you set it up,
Right.
but we have to look at it later. I can't tell you
You
exactly
can
where I
see
saw it.
security holes or like if you left something open by accident. Now, I know that the advisor does tell you when you left a port that's unusual open or something. It'd be kind of interesting to see a more detailed visualize that. Or are there any third-party products in things like that?
Yeah, no, can't help you there.
There's monitoring tools available that'll do some things for you, but I don't know that it's available yet to do everything.
Any other questions?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We've had other presentations on Azure. It just seems like it's kind of gotten to this point now where, I don't know, like it used to always be before, there was always like an asterisk of, oh, you wouldn't want to do it in this scenario, you wouldn't want to do it in this scenario. It seems like a lot of that's kind of gone away. Like you're at the micro level now of like reasons why somebody might not want to move to it. I mean, is that the case? I mean,
In my opinion,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's, again, I think over the last few years, it changes so fast. And I've only worked here a year, right? And in that year, I've learned more about Azure, but at the same time, so much has come out. And I'm shocked. Like, because you look at the Azure blog, just Google or look at an Azure blog, and they, just like a release notes. And there's something every day. It changes so quickly, and I think we have good competitors that we're trying to catch up to and outperform. So I was helping someone a while back, and used to, I don't know when it changed, but used to you had to shut down a VM to add a drive and power back on. And I remember thinking that's the dumbest thing, but I've been doing this in other products for years. Didn't have to do that. And then all of a sudden I'm helping somebody. We go to add a drive and boom, 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 there it went. Just added it, no shutdown. I think it's just it's just changing. And in fact, come to appreciate too, as you scroll through the documentation of Microsoft, look at the bottom, there's always a feedback form. And usually it'll either take you to the GitHub page of it, or you can leave it right there and say, hey, this is wrong, you guys need to fix this, or it'd be better if you guys would make this product do this and that. And I can tell you all those things are looked at. They're constantly looking at ways to improve the product. So I think just all of that over the last few years, we've gotten so much more business that they're ramping up everywhere. Things are changing so quickly. So maybe I just don't see the things why not to do it. And I will admit there are times you don't want to do it, but I think they're becoming pretty rare. Performance-wise, especially things that where now we have premium SSDs and ultra SSDs that just have insane performance
I will
at
say,
a cost.
everybody in this room should know what ephemeral storage means. Because if you get a server with ephemeral storage, and you shut it down, that data goes away. It just disappears.
Yeah.
We've had that happen before. We explain developers don't use those drives for permanent storage. And boom, it goes down. It's like everything's lost.
Yeah. Yeah. Satya did a presentation a while back. He was talking about performance, and they're just doing some crazy stuff right now. Just proving out how fast you can. Because we used to, talking 2, 3, 4 years ago, they said don't put SQL in the cloud, don't put it anywhere but on premise. It's not the case anymore. It runs it like crazy. So it's just changing. All right, guys, thank you.